In fewer than 24 hours, Miami-Dade and Broward counties are set to emerge from 2 months of a pandemic shutdown.
The lockdown will be lifted a little in Miami-Dade and Broward. These are baby steps, but we will take them. Still, it's going to take many months, maybe longer, for South Florida's economy to recover, and it's not going to happen without help from Washington.
Another round of relief passed the House late Friday, a $3 trillion package that includes more direct money to people and $1 trillion for ailing state and local governments. The so-called HEROES Act, passed by just 4 votes along party lines, now heads to the Senate, and President Trump has already called it dead on arrival. South Florida Congresswoman Donna Shalala was among the Democratic yes votes on Friday. As you see, she is with us this morning via Skype from Coral Gables. Congresswoman, great to have you.
Thank you very much.
Good morning, Congresswoman. So the President, Mitch McConnell, say the HEROES Act, which you voted for on Friday, is going nowhere in the Senate. How does this move forward? Because without a doubt, state and local governments and a lot of people need the help from Washington.
And there's bipartisan support in the Senate to move forward on resources for state and local government, as well as many of the other elements which have been funded before. There are only a couple of things that weren't in other packages. This bill allows us to extend unemployment insurance. Sure, we're going to open some restaurants in Miami-Dade, but frankly, they're not going to open at 100%, and it's hard to maintain a restaurant and pay all of your employees if you're only getting 25% of your revenue. So there are a lot of pieces of this, including direct checks to people, which we've done before, which we intend to repeat, as well as OSHA protectors and extra money for essential workers. They deserve combat pay as far as I'm concerned, and this bill includes that. As well as other things that we did before. So I'm really confused about the president's reaction because he well knows that we have to keep making investments in the economy. It's exactly what the Fed chair said. He said, basically, you can't spend too little to revive this economy. And we have to do it gradually over time.
Yeah, Representative, let me just jump in quickly, a follow-up. There is a provision in this bill that we've read about that the president and a lot of Republicans like Rick Scott really object to. It would provide, I have learned, $1,200 for undocumented immigrants. Is that something you support?
Yes, because they have tax numbers, because they're working here in our community. Because they've paid taxes in our community. And I think they deserve, like the rest of us, to get some of their tax money back. What we don't need is people starving on our streets. These are workers who have a tax number, and they ought to be able to get some resources to take care of their families. I don't know anyone in South Florida that doesn't believe that we ought to take care of people so that they're not starving.
And to Michael's point, I just wanted to point out that these are undocumented immigrants, but taxpayers working here, paying their taxes. Congresswoman, that was one of the big sticking points that we're hearing out of the Senate, but also Senate President Mitch McConnell had intimated that enough is enough with the direct payments to people. There's one more in this bill. Would you be in favor of what some are advocating as weekly or monthly continuing payments to Americans?
That would be ideal for a short period of time until we've gotten a vaccine or at least a treatment to allow us to control and to save people's lives. But right now, the politics isn't there for that. And what we're doing is repeating the $1,200 payment that we did before. I just don't understand. Mitch McConnell must not be talking to people in his community. I'm talking to people in our community, and they need help. We're not getting calls to my office. We're getting cries for help. I intend to bring our tax money, the money that we've sent to Washington, back to our community, because that's exactly what we're doing. It's not someone else's money. It's our money that we're bringing back to our community.
Yeah. Representative Shalala, one of the many objections to this HEROES bill, this HEROES Act, is Rick Scott, among other Republicans, says that it would bail out cities and counties, states, which have been really irresponsible in funding their own pension plans. And he says, well, why should we bail out pension plans when the mistake is on the part of those governments and not the federal government? What do you say to him?
This is the Senator Scott that totally screwed up our unemployment compensation system in this state. He has no standing to say things like that. In our community, our cities deserve the resources. They're spending resources on COVID-19. The state is spending resources, and they need the money. Look at Miami Beach. It probably has about 90,000 residents. It gets 10 million visitors. It has to maintain its police department, its fire department. We're talking about teachers and police and fire and sanitation workers and transit workers. We're talking about real people, our friends and neighbors in our community that work hard, that happen to work for the government or get their resources through the government. Again, we want to bring Florida's money back to Florida.
Congresswoman, I want to talk a little bit about state unemployment. I was watching a town hall you were part of just a few days ago with other Democratic South Florida congressmen and women, and all I heard from you all was the same kind of utter frustration that you must be hearing over and over from constituents who we've heard some are frankly suicidal. That's how desperate they are. But really, what can Congress do about this state system to change it, to make progress, to get it going? What is that role?
We've given them administrative money so that they can straighten out the Florida system. I know the governor inherited this system, but he didn't work on it his first year, and he's got to straighten it out now. He's hearing from constituents. He now says, well, they made mistakes in their applications. Most of the people that are applying for unemployment have never applied for unemployment before. Of course, they're going to make mistakes. Our responsibility is to make sure they get the money. And by that, I mean every elected official in the state, those of us who have brought the money back and those of us that are administering the system. So the governor needs to all hands on deck. This is a full court press to get people their resources. We don't need excuses. We need to get this job done. We've extended unemployment in the HEROES Act until the end of the year. I hope we won't need it until the end of the year and the people are going to be able to go back to work. But frankly, we've got to take care of our citizens, our friends down here in South Florida. Yeah. And we're going to keep the pressure up on the governor. But we did give them administrative money, so there are no financial hurdles here.
Yeah. Very briefly, Representative Shalala, I want to bring up, you got into a little hot water recently by not reporting to the appropriate congressional committee the fact that you sold some of your stocks, bonds from your portfolio. How did you make that mistake? What happened there?
Well, what I was doing was selling all of my stock in 2019, and that's what I was doing in 2019 with the intent of doing a blind trust, and it's on me. I take full responsibility. You're supposed to report when you sell your stock. I wasn't selling one stock, I was selling all of it. And it's now been fully reported. And I have no unrestricted stock left. It's all been reported and all been sold. It shouldn't have happened, but I take full responsibility for that.
Congresswoman Donna Shalala, always appreciate your time. Thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you very much.